They sent the invitation on a rainy Wednesday, thick cardstock pale blue, embossed with silver lettering like it came from Capitol Hill or some old money wedding, the kind you hold with two hands. The envelope read, "The Whitmore Family Gathering, July 10th, 6:00 p.m., the Ellsworth Grand, Seattle." I didn't need to open it. I knew the hotel. My office handled its elite tier bookings. I'd signed the contract myself digitally, of course. 30 minutes later, my phone buzzed. A text from my cousin Stephanie, the self-proclaimed family coordinator, always chirpy, always clean with her cruelty. "Hey Meredith, just a heads up, venues at full capacity this year. Black tie only. Very upscale. Hope that's okay." That emoji, I'd seen it before. When the wedding invites never came. When my name disappeared from the family email threads. No one ever said I didn't belong. They just quietly erased me. Outside my window, the Seattle skyline blurred into a gray watercolor. The rain kept tapping. I turned back to my desk contract, opened their names in bold. They had no idea. Not who signed the contract, not whose building they just walked into. And I wasn't about to tell them. Not yet. My father used to say there are two kinds of people in the world, those who carry the name and those who carry the weight. He'd say it after family dinners when the dishes were done and his second bourbon softened the edge in his voice. Everyone would nod, like he'd quoted scripture, but I never forgot the first time I realized which one I was. I was 12. He had just given my older brother Grant his first set of cufflinks. "You're a Whitmore," he told him. "Act like it." When I asked what that meant for me, he smiled without warmth. "You'll figure it out." By 23, I was supposed to step into a junior partner role at Whitmore Financial. There was already an office waiting for me. My name was printed on the glass, Meredith Whitmore, Strategic Development. It lasted 6 months, not because I failed, but because I asked questions about the layoffs, the outsourced janitorial staff, the mysteriously empty pension accounts that no one wanted to talk about. I didn't cause trouble. I just refused to close my eyes. "You think too small," my father snapped across his mahogany desk. "No," I said. "I think about people who carry the weight so others can carry the name." That was the last honest thing we ever said to each other. After that, birthdays were missed. Messages came through cousins, not directly. My seat at the table quietly removed. I enrolled in the hospitality program at the University of Washington. Graduated top of my class. No one from the family came to the ceremony. No phone call, no card, nothing. A year later, I was scrubbing bathrooms in a tired little motor lodge off Rainier Avenue. 10 rooms a night, towels stiff with bleach, no elevator, no air conditioning, but it was honest. It was mine. Then came Stephanie's wedding photo, texted to me like a slap. Everyone grinning champagne flutes, raised golden light over crisp suits and rented happiness. I wasn't in it. Of course I wasn't. But I remembered that night perfectly. I sat in the back near the kitchen sharing a slice of cake with the dishwasher and a tired DJ who left halfway through. Stephanie had told me later, "We figured you were more comfortable back there anyway." 2 days later, someone forwarded a screenshot from the family group chat. My old housekeeping name tag, faded plastic crooked lettering, captioned, "She wanted to clean toilets. Guess she got her wish." They laughed. No one defended me, not even Aunt Judith, who once told me, "You don't have to become them to be worth something." That night, I packed it all up, the hurt, the silence, the last pieces of hope, and I let go. I stopped waiting for them to see me, and I started building something they couldn't erase. I didn't know it yet, but that cracked old name tag, it would become the first brick in something bigger than all of them. I arrived in Vermont with a duffel bag, a second-hand laptop, and just enough cash to last 12 weeks if I skipped breakfast and made dinner stretch. There was no grand plan, no startup deck or venture capital dream, just a need to be somewhere quiet, somewhere no one knew my name or the weight it used to carry. I found a room for rent in an old farmhouse turned inn outside Montpellier, run by a retired couple, Irene and Cal, who hired me under the table to help manage check-ins and fold sheets. Room 7 was mine. Slanted ceilings, one drafty skylight, a twin bed, and the faint scent of cedar in the wood beams. It should have felt small, like another downgrade. But it didn't. For the first time in years, the silence didn't hurt. It healed. At night, after guests had turned in, I sat at the front desk with a worn notebook and 1,000 questions swirling in my head. Why did some guests come back while others didn't? What made a stranger feel at home in a room that wasn't theirs? I started watching, listening, noticing the way one flickering lamp made a guest restless, or how a misprinted sign confused every couple from out of town. I fixed them not with a budget, but with care. Guests started asking for me. Not Miss Whitmore, just Meredith. That was enough. When Irene and Cal decided to sell the place, I didn't flinch. I came with spreadsheets, handwritten notes, and a modest offer. They said yes. I renamed it Elin House. Not after myself, God no, but after the feeling I wanted people to leave with comfort, clarity, calm. I had no staff, no brand, but I had vision. I scrubbed every floorboard. I painted each room in soft, natural tones, sage cream sand. I replaced the heavy drapes with linen panels that danced in the breeze. And I left a handwritten note on every nightstand. You're here now. You can rest. People remembered that line. Word spread. No PR agency needed. One day, a guest slipped a $100 bill under her pillow with a note. Whoever made this room feel like home, thank you. I kept that note. I kept everything, every review, every suggestion, every scribbled comment card. I built from the bottom quietly, like someone laying bricks in the dark. And through it all, I kept my old housekeeping name tag tucked inside my nightstand drawer, just in case I ever forgot what I came from. Then one winter night, I looked up from my desk and saw a familiar last name on a reservation. Whitmore. Not a cousin. My father. I stared at the screen fingers hovering over the keyboard pulse, steady but colder than the snow outside. He didn't know where he was staying, but I did. I stared at the reservation. Douglas Whitmore. 2 nights. Deluxe King Suite. No special requests. He had no idea. No clue his room was in a building I'd scrubbed, painted, rebuilt with my own hands. He thought he was checking into a well-reviewed boutique inn in rural Vermont. He didn't realize it was mine. I didn't cancel the booking. I didn't change the rate. I didn't touch a thing. I didn't need to. He came and went without recognizing me. I stayed behind the desk, hair tucked under a knit cap sweater, loose glasses on. Just another face in the lobby. He didn't look up long enough to notice anyway. Still treated the staff like wallpaper. On his last morning, he handed his keycard to Irene, barely nodding. Said something about the coffee being too weak. Never said thank you. Never asked who ran the place. And that was fine. That was perfect. He walked away and I stayed still. No rage, no pride, just something quieter. Certainty. He wouldn't have recognized me if I'd stood right in front of him. And that's when I understood something important. I wasn't building a hotel. I was building insulation, a life no one could take credit for or tear apart. The next year, I opened my second property, Elan Ridge, in a lakeside town in upstate New York. Then came Elan Harbor along the Oregon coast. Each inn was small, intentional, designed for warmth, not flash. No velvet ropes, no fake greetings, no marble fountains, just clean rooms, soft light, and real hospitality. I hired people like me. Former housekeepers, cooks, concierges, folks who'd worked in the back long before they ever got near the front. I gave them titles, decision-making, power, good pay, and most importantly, dignity. My name never appeared on a door or website. All the legal paperwork ran through Caldwell Holdings, my mother's maiden name, one my family never thought to ask about. Let them assume the owner was a retired tech exec or an older man. I didn't care. The silence gave me space. By 30, I owned 4 properties across 3 states. My brand was a whisper, but a strong one. Guests remembered how they felt, not what they saw. One afternoon, I was reviewing linen samples at Elan Harbor when my assistant forwarded a booking request. Family reunion, large group, high-profile last name, Whitmore. I nearly laughed. Stephanie had requested our Cascade Premium experience, said she had pulled strings to get such a popular venue. She didn't know who owned it. She didn't know whose signature had approved it. She didn't even know she'd been here before, just not in the way she expected. I reread the request. Then I added a small handwritten note for the welcome folder. We hope your stay reminds you where you come from and what was never truly lost. No signature, none needed. The irony was sharp enough to taste. Stephanie Whitmore, my cousin, the same one who once joked I was more comfortable in the kitchen than at the table, had booked the most exclusive event package at Elan Cascade for the annual Whitmore family reunion. She bragged in the family group chat that she'd pulled strings, winked about a private owner who gave them a great rate, said something about being recognized for the family name. She had no idea whose name was behind the contract. The booking came through our elite tier corporate portal. She never even saw my name. Of course not. Nothing in the paperwork said Meredith. Just M. Caldwell Managing Partner, Caldwell Hospitality Group. It was perfect. I personally reviewed the booking. I upgraded their packaged champagne on arrival, fresh local florals, full-service staffing custom linens. No one knew I approved it with a few keystrokes and a small smile. I handed the client account to Hannah, our guest relations lead. She was sharp level-headed and thankfully completely unaware of my personal history. To her, Stephanie was just another detail-obsessed client with color-coded spreadsheets and too many exclamation points. Treat them kindly, I told Hannah, but not delicately. She raised a brow, meaning, serve them exactly the way they've asked to be treated. She paused. Then she nodded, catching something in my tone I didn't say out loud. I spent the next week reviewing every inch of that property. Floor plans, light placement service routes. I wasn't obsessing, I was preparing. I wanted the night to go perfectly. Not to prove anything, but to make sure nothing, not even an offhand comment, could shake the foundation I'd built. 6 days before the event, I sent a message to the only family member who ever saw me beyond the noise, Aunt Judith. You're coming. Arrive at 6:40. Don't let them come early. It matters. She didn't reply, but the message showed read. That was enough. On the final walkthrough, I made one quiet change. Usually our guest suites featured a printed welcome message from the host family, something like, welcome to your home away from home from the Whitmore family. But this time I replaced it with something simpler. Clean white cardstock, navy script, no names. We hope your stay reminds you where you come from and what was never truly lost. No fanfare, no signature, just intention. And on the night of the reunion, I didn't walk in through the main entrance with the guests. I entered through the service corridor past the linen carts, the champagne flutes, the quiet bustle of staff in black slacks and clean white shirts. I wasn't hiding. I was remembering. There's something sacred about walking through the back to get to the center. It keeps your feet on the ground. It reminds you who you are, even when they forget. At 6:40 sharp, Aunt Judith arrived, and everything was in motion. By 6:45, the guests began to arrive first in pairs, then in chatter-filled clusters. High heels on polished floors, deep laughs with forced confidence, handshakes that tried too hard. It was the kind of sparkle that came less from joy and more from the fear of being forgotten. They didn't notice me. Of course they didn't. I stood just beyond the kitchen corridor behind a service monitor, watching through a discreet feed, a quiet observer, a shadow. And then Stephanie arrived. She swept into the lobby like a cruise director, grinning, waving perfectly styled and absolutely unaware. So elegant, she chirped to the front desk. "It's giving Martha's Vineyard meets Aspen." Her words, not mine. She posed by the hydrangea arrangements she'd demanded last minute. My team had made sure they were flawless, blue and white, cascading just so. She had no clue I'd signed the final order. 10 minutes later, my father arrived, still tall, still composed, still dressed like legacy. 2 younger men flanked him, finance types. Polished shoes, tight smiles. I didn't know them, but I recognized the language in their body posture control. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. He walked in like he owned the place. And that was the part that made me quietly exhale, because I did. I stayed out of view, letting the room buzz and swell. No one noticed the missing name tag. No one wondered who M. Caldwell really was. They had long since edited me out of their narrative. And yet every detail, the lighting, the champagne, pour the flow of soft instrumental jazz over dinner, was mine. That was the real elegance of this night. They were wrapped in my work without knowing it. At exactly 7:15, the ballroom lights dimmed just slightly, just enough to soften the chatter, just enough to draw a pause. 3 soft chimes echoed through the speakers, deliberate, subtle. Stephanie was mid-sentence about the custom flatware when Everett, our guest services manager, approached her with a clipboard in hand. "Miss Whitmore," he said gently, "the owner has requested we begin the welcome presentation now." Stephanie blinked. "Oh, I don't think that's necessary. I've already thanked the staff, and I've coordinated all the details. The owner doesn't do these things." Everett didn't argue. He simply turned toward the small stage at the front of the room. The screen behind it flickered to life. A soft navy background appeared. Clean serif text. No music, no drama. Just 5 words, Elan Cascade, founded by Meredith R. Caldwell, Chief Executive Officer, MRRC Group. The air shifted. Someone at the far end of the room dropped a fork. My father's posture stiffened. Stephanie's mouth parted in stunned silence. And in that moment, they finally paused long enough to wonder, whose house are we in? I stepped onto the landing, just above the ballroom navy dress. No jewelry hair pinned smooth. No spotlight, no microphone, just me. And still the room stilled, like I'd shattered glass. They hadn't heard my name in years, but they felt it now, in the floor, in their throats, in their silence. "Good evening," I said, voice steady. "I know most of you didn't expect to see me here tonight." A few people tried to laugh nervously. One table clinked glasses out of habit. But I held the pause, not with drama, but intention. I wasn't invited after all. The room inhaled. No one exhaled. But I thought it was time someone welcomed you properly to Elan Cascade. I let my eyes scan the crowd. Faces I hadn't seen in a decade. Faces that once turned away when I was setting tables in the back or clearing champagne flutes in someone else's ballroom. They were older now, stiffer, but their expressions hadn't changed. They just wore the discomfort louder. After all, I continued quietly, "You're standing in my home." Stephanie stepped forward, pale and blinking. "Meredith, what are you doing?" I looked at her the same way I might study chipped glass, carefully, without urgency. "Exactly what you taught me," I said, making an entrance. She flushed. But, you booked this under the Caldwell name. We thought I know what you thought, I said, gently cutting her off. You assumed a favor had been pulled, a door quietly opened. You believed the family name still carried weight. I let the moment breathe. The truth is, I gave you everything you asked for, and then some. Full service, custom upgrades, flowers overnighted, and a 20% premium for short notice. The invoice was fair, generous actually. My voice didn't shake. That was the victory. For years you all spoke about me like I was some story that ended halfway through. The housekeeper, the dropout, the girl who threw her name away. I shifted my weight, still calm. You told people I disappeared, but I didn't. You just stopped looking. From across the room, my father stood. Slowly. Meredith, he said, voice lower than I remembered. You own this place. I met his gaze, not with spite, but with finality. I own 17, I said, across 4 countries. There was no applause, no gasp, just stillness, the kind that doesn't come from shock but realization. I'm not here for a standing ovation, I added. I came to return something. With a nod, Hannah and 2 staff members entered, each carrying sleek black folders, one for every guest. Inside, a signed copy of their event contract, the full invoice billed to the Whitmore family, and a handwritten card that read, "Sometimes the stories you tried to erase still find their way to the wall near the back." And then I stepped down the stairs, slow, quiet, unbothered, not to confront them, but to finally leave the shadows I never belonged in. After I left the ballroom, I didn't look back. I didn't need to. There were no fireworks, no shouting, no sudden reconciliation, just the sound of shoes on marble, a few whispered questions, and the subtle shift that happens when a story rewrites itself in real time. That was enough. I walked through the same service hallway I'd entered earlier, past folded linens, half-empty water pitchers, and staff resetting trays. A few nodded. One smiled, unsure whether to say anything. I smiled back. That moment mattered more than any toast or standing ovation. The VIP suite Stephanie had insisted on booking was reassigned earlier that evening to a diplomat's wife, 8 months pregnant and arriving late. Stephanie's new room was still beautiful, of course, but it faced the alley. Coincidence? Or maybe just a full circle kind of grace. I didn't feel victorious. I felt steady, like something inside me had finally stopped shaking. Around 11 p.m., there was a soft knock on my office door. I didn't call for anyone, didn't expect anyone either. When I opened it, Aunt Judith stood there. She didn't smile, didn't ask to come in. She just handed me an envelope, nodded once, and turned away without a word. Inside was a photograph, old, faded, with creased corners. I was maybe 8. Standing barefoot on the back porch of the Whitmore house, gripping a lemonade pitcher with both hands. My father's hand rested gently on my shoulder. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't remember the picture being taken, but I remembered that day, not for any big reason, just that I spilled the lemonade a few minutes later and braced myself for the scolding. But no one yelled. They laughed, even him. That was the last time I remembered feeling like I belonged. On the back of the photo in Aunt Judith's looping script was just one line, "You were part of us." That did something to me, not because it made things okay, but because it named something I'd felt and carried for so long without language. Grief isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a space you sit in for years without realizing you're waiting for someone to notice you're still there. I held the photo like it might vanish. Then I placed it inside my desk drawer, right next to my framed name tag. Meredith, housekeeping, cracked plastic, worn ink, still mine. The next morning, I went down to the service floor before sunrise. The housekeeping team was just clocking in faces, groggy shoulders a little heavy. I walked into the old supply room, now a break space. Near the back, the coat rack still stood wood-chipped from years of use. I reached into my bag, pulled out the framed name tag, and hung it on the wall. No plaque, no spotlight, just a nail, just presence. Some legacies aren't announced. They're remembered quietly. Spring came early that year. The trees outside Eland Cascade bloomed in soft pinks and pale greens, brushing the windows with color like watercolor on glass. I sat by the window of my office tea, cooling beside me, a stack of hand-addressed envelopes at my elbow. This time, I wasn't waiting for an invitation. The annual Whitmore family reunion would go out again, but the return address had changed. M. R. Caldwell, C.O. Elan Group, Vermont, USA. I didn't build Elan to prove anyone wrong. I built it to prove that healing can take the shape of something real, that you can be both the girl who scrubbed floors and the woman who owns the building, and still choose grace over bitterness. Betrayal teaches you who people are. Loyalty teaches you who you are, but rebirth that teaches you who you're meant to become. Sometimes the people who erase you are the ones most afraid of your light, but your worth is not up for debate. It's not a seat at their table. It's the table you build for yourself. If this story moved you, leave a comment below. Tell me, what did they try to erase in you? And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that remind us you still belong.